Welcome everybody to the keynote we prepared for the Open Lab Summer School. My name is Sofie Smetcoren, and together with my colleague Sarah Dury, we would like to present to you some general thoughts, insights and challenges we experienced in research practices involving the co-construction of communities. Both of us are researchers at the Department of Educational Sciences at the VUB, and during the last 10 years, we have had experience in doing research with and for a variety of communities. Ever since Henri Lefebvre's concept of the right to the city, the question of equal access to resources offered by urban areas has been on the agenda of many different stakeholders, including activists, citizens, policymakers, practitioners, and of course, scientists. Lefebvre's original concept called for renewed access to urban life, one that empowered citizens to shape the city as they desired through the right to participation and active engagement. This concept was later on interpreted by David Harvey as the freedom to make and remake the city we live in, which emphasized the need for co-creation and co-production in future urban policymaking. In striving for a participatory approach to tackle societal urban challenges involving all stakeholders, scientists can play a crucial role. This has also led to a change in mentality within research practices, with researchers stepping outside the walls of the university, with participants being assigned different roles of not only being involved as a consultant or an informant, but also as owners and co-shapers of the research as a whole. This shift in mentality is also seen more recently in large funding sources. Just think of the Co-Create program at Innoviris, the importance of the valorization component within the large SBO program of the Research Foundation Flanders, the rise of funding programs for citizen science projects, and on a European level, the focus on responsible research and innovation approach as a key action within the Horizon 2020 program. When co-constructing communities within research practices, a crucial question to ask is, from which research paradigm or approach do we start? We, within our research practice as an adult educational scientist, or in Flemish we call it agoog, aim to take into account a rather critical emancipatory research approach, which starts from the ontological idea that the world is unequal and not value-free. On the one hand, this approach aims to find a middle ground between the more traditional empirical analytical and the interpretative approach. But on the other hand, it wants to go much further. Critical emancipatory research approach recognizes that people are, are expressive agents and interpreted their reality themselves, but it will always view the subjective experience within a context, a structure, or a history. People always have a certain worldview, live in a society in which some groups have different positions or are dominant over other groups. And critical realism then wants to investigate which of these underlying contextual mechanisms explain observable objective events or help to understand subjective experiences. Research taking into account this approach therefore seeks to identify these different combinations of conditions, context, mechanisms, and outcomes. It is insufficient to merely understand, but the critical emancipatory approach wants to change through research. It does put forward a perspective in which social action and social change are possible. Research is then primarily aimed at emancipating and advancing disadvantaged groups. Research thus not as an end goal, but research as means. So, building further on this introduction and from our experience within research projects, we would like to share with you some reflections we have encountered as researchers. My colleague Sarah will be happy to take you through this in the next slides.
Initially and traditionally, we, as researchers from university have been working from an ivory tower, also known as performing research as knowledge translation, which is the top-down way of working. Top, university and researcher, and down, stakeholders, participants, citizens. But knowledge transition has been criticized as it has a tendency to demonstrate that knowledge can only be created by university-based scientists and that it needs to be translated in a more accessible way, specifically to non-academics. Consequently, it's indirectly at the expense of non-academic stakeholders. In research nowadays, co-creation is becoming more and more important. And because of that, it is due to the shift in the relationship between universities and society. And there you see the switch from knowledge translation to knowledge production. So that knowledge production is produced in co-creative research projects that comes right from the context where the project, the research is taking place. Academic stakeholders work together. All stakeholders, going from citizens, policymakers to the industry and researchers, who identify together the problems, discuss questions, make plans, execute plans, disseminate and implement outcomes. But as a researcher, you're only a little piece of something bigger. So be humble with your role. The challenge, however, is to create research equity among academics and community partners. So academics not only have power in relation to the institution for which they work, but also from their own class, their education, their racial, ethnic backgrounds, or other identity position. So it means that the potential of reproducing systemic inequalities and treat community members unfairly. Be aware of that. But what we also see in the last decade is that concepts such as co-production, co-creation, co-construction have gained popularity. So we see that also in industry, government, civil participants, and academia. They want to work together. They want to co-create a future and develop innovative solutions. But also be aware of the boundary judgments. It can delimit what is considered relevant from what is not. So important is to speak the same language, play correct expectations, know and understand the rules of play. It depends on the funding, on the academic mentality, but however, speak the same language with everyone in a project. Also important are the questions surrounding the superiority of one data collection method over another. But it's important that it needs to be replaced by larger issues surrounding the meaning and the implications of the research itself. So the desired shift is to see evidence that analysis takes account of different perspectives, not consensus, and to look beyond innovation with data collection methods to approaches for collective sense-making in search of surprise.
We hope to have shared some messages with you concerning the topic of co constructing communities in research practices. But to keep the discussion alive, we would like to ask you some questions for reflection by using the golden circle of Simon Sinek. First, why? Why do you do research? What drives you as a researcher? And how? How do you carry out research? This can be methodological, but also think about your attitude as a researcher. What role do you take on? What? What do you contribute as a researcher? This can be in terms of products you deliver, but also reflect on what added value you bring or want to bring to society. And overarching the why, how, and what to other questions can be of importance to discuss, and that is who. Who are you doing this with, and for whom are you doing your research? And what difficulties do you experience in achieving your goals, and how do you solve them? We would like to thank you very much for your attention, and if you have any questions, concerns, or thoughts, please do not hesitate to contact us in the future. Maybe and hopefully we will meet in real life next time.